Hello, once again, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us on another episode of Science Save Sharks. Now, today is the Q&A session that we had on Wednesday with our biologist, Ralph Watson. Ralph, thank you very much for joining us again.
Hi, Dickie. Thank you for having me again.
Yes, man, always a pleasure, Ralph. So, guys, for those new viewers, we are from a company called Marine Dynamics. We're a whale watching and shark cage diving company based in Gansbaai, South Africa, about 2 hours away from Cape Town, but we also have various research and conservation projects. And Ralph spoke to us last week about one of the projects, which is the BRUV studies. He was talking about the diversity of sharks in South Africa and the Gansbaai area, and also how to study them. So, Ralph, it was a very interesting chat. I had a good time, and we had some questions from that chat. And one of them was from Massimo Evangelista. It was on another platform, asking if killer whales are still around in the area. And Ralph, I'm going to hand this one over to you.
Thank you, Massimo. Yeah, that's a very interesting question. Through our normal channels, we haven't heard anything recent about the killer whale. So the last sightings were about a month ago. However, keep in mind that these animals, they travel immense distances relatively quickly. So they've been known to travel up to 80 kilometers per day. So they could be at one end of South Africa the one day, and then literally a week later, they can be at the other end. So yeah, as far as we know, we haven't seen them recently, but please keep an eye out on the sea.
Yes, guys, these animals, not only the marine mammals, but sharks as well, can travel incredible distances in short times. Like our southern right whale populations that come to South African waters to mate and give birth, they can travel back to their feeding grounds in the sub-Antarctic in less than a month. That's thousands of kilometers, even for the small ones, traveling in less than a month. So you're 100% right there, Ralph. So, guys, we had some offline questions as well. But before we get to that, obviously the talk was on the BRUV and the BRUV studies. And I was wondering if you can give us a bit of insight, Ralph, as to where it all started. When did this initiative or the study method begin of the BRUVs?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question. So BRUVs have been around for about 20 years. So they were first developed in Australia in the beginning of the 2000s. Before that, it was quite difficult for marine scientists to get a good underwater camera for a good price and actually stick it underwater for quite a long period of time. In the beginning of the 2000s, you had the advent of new technologies coming out, and the GoPros were actually very favorable for that. So once they started to get on the market and become more affordable for marine scientists, that's when BRUVs as a method really started to hit off.
Yeah, well, Ralph, me and you had a chat a bit earlier about, you mentioned in Jacques Cousteau's time about the underwater cameras, bigger than the actual BRUV rig that we have right now. So at that time, guys, I don't think people were even thinking about it because it just wasn't affordable. If you had an underwater camera, you wouldn't stick it around unmanned for any amount of time. So, guys, feel free to ask us any live questions. We are still talking about the BRUVs, but will be answering any questions that you guys have about the basic marine area around South Africa as well. So, guys, Ralph, I've got another question for you. We've spoken about the history We've spoken about the history of the BRUVs, but what I want to know is, you said that they started off in New Zealand and then they sort of like scattered. You're using them in South Africa right now. Is it possible to make a comparison, say, from a BRUV study done in Australian waters opposed to one done in South Africa?
The short answer for that is yes, as long as you keep all the other things relatively similar. So BRUVs have gone through a few iterations. So for those of you who saw the video yesterday, We very much use like a T-shaped structure with a canister on the one end and a camera on the other end. There have been other forms of BRUVs where it's more of a box structure to house the camera in. But as long as the bait canister is approximately a meter away from the camera itself and you use the same type of bait, then yeah, you can easily compare one study, a study done in one area to a study done in another area.
Okay, cool. So if you're keeping the setup more or less the same, the conditions are relatively similar. Ralph, I just want to pop this in there for those of you that are new. BRUV is the baited remote underwater video. Ralph, can you just give us a quick lowdown again for the guys that are checking in for the first time on what a BRUV actually is?
Yeah, so I would definitely refer back to the video from yesterday as well. That's where you can actually see a BRUV in action. So yeah, as it says, baited remote underwater video. So you've got a canister with bait on the one end. So we generally use sardines because it creates quite a nice chum cloud, like very oily fish as well. A lot of fish are attracted to it. And then we put a camera on the other end. In general, we use a GoPro camera. And then, yeah, we drop it over the side of the boat. It sinks down to the bottom. And then as the camera is rolling, it captures all the different fish species that are attracted to the bait canister, but also to the activity that's going around there, trying to figure out what's going on. And it's a beautiful method to use. You don't take any fish out of the ecosystem, and you can showcase to people that are living at the shore that have never seen their marine life up close and underwater, just to like the diversity of fish species in that area. And yeah, it's a fantastic communication tool as well.
Yeah, definitely, Ralph. I agree 100% with you there. Are there any species that would, say, for instance, not be attracted to the BRUV rigs?
Yeah, so normally you get like quite a diversity of species that are attracted to it, either to the sardines themselves or to the activity, like I said earlier. But you do get on occasion fish species that are specialist feeders. They only like the one thing, and they're not attracted to all the activity that's going on. As an example, mussel crackers that we get around our coastline here, beautiful big fish, but yeah, it prefers mussels. So if there's a sardine in the bait canister, they're generally not that attracted to it. But if you really want to figure out like, oh, how many mussel crackers are there in this area and are they doing well, all you need to do is actually change out the bait. You don't have to change the entire setup, use a different camera, deploy it differently or anything like that. Just switch out the bait to something that they would prefer. And that way you can get an indication of what your target species are like in that area.
Awesome. Well, Ralph, I use the same. I go all over the world attracting various shark species, and depending on the species that I want to attract, I would also use different baits. So what you're saying is definitely it makes a lot of sense. If you're looking for a specialist species, you're going to be using a specialist type of bait, and I think the mussel cracker is an excellent example of that. So you explained earlier that if you want to compare these studies, say for instance between Australia and South Africa, considering the conditions are the same, you're in shallow water, your BRUV rig is more or less the same, it's quite easy to compare those studies in theory. But I'm gonna throw you a ball here. What if you, for instance, want to do a study, or can it be done from different depths of water, one inshore or shallower, and then going deeper down? Can you compare BRUV studies in that way?
Yeah, again, short answer, yes. So as long as you use the same BRUV setup, you can actually, as long as the technology holds, then you can deploy BRUVs right inshore all the way to the deep water and also compare them. So there was actually a study done in New Zealand around North Island, and from 3 different points around North Island, these scientists deployed BRUVs at set depth levels. They started off with 100 meters, 200 meters, and they went all the way down to 1,200 meters. And they found out that relatively inshore, all the inshore samples around North Island were actually quite different to one another. But the more they went deeper and deeper, the fish community structure started to become more homogeneous. So just imagine around the South African coast, I spoke last week how the diversity of shark species that we get around here is very much driven by the environment. Warm water versus cold water, different currents, but also you get a lot of sunlight and the day-night cycle. So that's really what drives the diversity more inshore. However, if you go deeper and deeper, you don't get that day-night cycle. The currents won't, the temperature differences won't be that big. So the fish community structure becomes more homogeneous as you go deeper and deeper. And that is definitely what this study proved.
Yeah, well, that makes a lot of sense, because if you're saying that closer inshore, shallower waters, you've got all these environmental factors, like for instance the kelp, the currents, the waves, and you mentioned sunlight, wind, all of that creates a completely different environment around the coastline. But as you're heading the deeper waters where sunlight is no longer penetrating, you don't have these strong these strong environmental factors, your species are going to be, or at least for the sake of this study, a lot more similar, because the environment is a lot more similar.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Nikita,
hi, Nikita.
Thank you very much for joining, guys. Feel free to say hi, pop in your comments. We've got a question. Ralph?
So in general, the animal most often seen during these deployments, they would definitely be your sea breams. So they're a fish species, like a family of fish species that are quite very common around the coastline, around here, but also elsewhere around the world. So yeah, if you've got a method, or at least a bait that attracts the broad general range of species, then the species that you get in that area that are the most common, then they definitely appear on the BRUV most frequently as well. So I can give you an example. So we've got species like the Hottentots around here, blacktail, Franz Madame, and Steenkies as well. So those are definitely the ones that I've seen most frequently on the cameras. Shark-wise, you're looking more at your benthic inshore animals. And in my study, the most abundant cat shark species was definitely the puff adder shy shark. So they were also seen on the video yesterday. So they're very small. They definitely stick a lot to the bottom. They camouflage very nicely. And yeah, as a follow-up to that, you've got your pajama and your leopard cat sharks as well.
Awesome. So guys, that was, you've obviously been doing these BRUVs for quite a while, Ralph. So guys, when he's referring to the video, we did upload a video onto our Marine Dynamics YouTube yesterday. Just a short clip where Ralph also just explains about the BRUVs, and we show his deployments, how he's deploying the BRUVs, and then also some cool footage from the BRUVs. So we highly urge you guys to go check that out on our YouTube channel. We'll put up the link to that a bit later on. So Ralph, is there anything, couple of announcements. Is there anything happening next? Oh,
do you want to do that question as well? Do you use divers in your research? Not necessarily. So my research was very much from the surface level. So we deployed BRUVs over the side. We did catch some cat sharks for a different part of my study. The only reason why I dived down was to take a look at my acoustic receivers. So yeah, So I didn't do any transects. I didn't go diving and look at the fish community myself. Hello, Charlene. Welcome
Hey,
back.
Charlene. Yeah, thank you very much for tuning in, Charlene. So, guys, when we're talking about divers, that is a topic that we're going to be doing at another time. We're going to get to your question now. Just for the question about the divers, we do dive for our acoustic receivers. Alison Towner will be speaking about that in another chat a bit later on. We've also got a cool video prepared for our YouTube schedule to update, but we do dive for our acoustic receivers that basically pick up any tagged sharks in the area. And within a certain radius, if they're swimming past these receivers, it will get logged onto that receiver. But I'm going to hand this question over to you, Mr. Watson.
All right. So, yeah, Ben asked, how effective is the deployment of the BRUV when you're out in the field? Now, effectiveness, you really have to what are you comparing it to? So if we are looking at, say, fishing to accomplish the same type of method, then when you go fishing, you really have to target your fish or the animals that you want to look at, because there's a lot of different gear that you use. The same actually with trawling, where you drag a big net behind, but there you are limited to the sand sites mostly. So, and it's also very, very extractive. So when you're looking at, say, reef fish species and you're talking about effectiveness, BRUVs in general are incredibly effective as a method. Yeah, so I can't say too much about it apart from, yeah, absolutely very effective, cost effective. You don't extract anything, but it's also, again, a fantastic communication tool. All right, Charlene asked, tell us the most amazing thing you've seen on your BRUVs. All right, lovely question, Charlene. So on Wednesday, I also spoke about some of that. Definitely, from my point of view, I love the different behaviors, how different species interact with each other around the BRUV rig, but also the bigger shark species. So your great white sharks, your ragged tooth sharks. So we showed some videos about that on Wednesday as well. Here we actually have a video of a great white shark around the BRUV canister. So yeah, you just sort of silhouette in the background, but then curiously it comes closer and closer and trying to investigate what's going on here. So I'm just going to let it play for a little bit.
Oh, nice. What a beautiful shark. This is obviously a young female, curious, not aggressive at all, just checking out what's going on here. I love that underwater sound in the ocean, always.
Yeah. So I'm just going to jump in. So on Wednesday, we spoke about Minister Creasy's shark panel as well. So Charlene is part of that. And we wish her a lot of luck with that.
Good luck, Charlene. We're looking forward to seeing you guys' results. And for the rest of the viewers, when we hear anything, we'll definitely keep you guys updated and posted on that. So, guys, just a couple of announcements for next week and what is to come. Oliver Jewell and Alison Towner, two marine biologists, will be speaking about great white shark tagging and tracking around the Great Dyer Island ecosystem. And that is something I'm very excited about. That's going to be the Science Save Sharks episode for next Wednesday. So I've spent much time tagging and tracking sharks with these guys. I'm sure they're going to have some very cool stories. If not even just about the sharks, about the tracking itself. We spent nights, full-on nights in cold water, seeing sharks do some very interesting things. So keep an eye out for that chat. I'm definitely tuning in myself. Ralph, is there anything else happening next week?
Yes. So next week, Thursday, there's going to be another Lamont Wine and Marine Big Five pairing. And Brenda is going to chat about penguins, and Lamont is going to pair that with one of their wines. So please RSVP for that on our Facebook page of Marine Dynamics. It's free, but yeah, you just have to RSVP for that.
Yeah, guys, so keep up with that. Charlene is saying, my daughter says that the shark is very bad, but don't worry, it doesn't eat people. And guys, great white sharks are not known to attack humans. In fact, I've been in the water with quite a few sharks without a cage, and I've never had a problem. So she's 100% right. They are not known to attack humans. So thank you very much for that comment as well. Nikita.
Thank you, Nikita.
Okay, awesome, guys. Ralph, you mentioned that Brenda is going to be talking about the penguins and the Le Monde, about the Le Monde wines. I'm excited for that as well. With that, we are going to be posting a video on our Marine Dynamics YouTube channel about the penguins. The penguins released our African penguin and seabird sanctuary. So subscribe to our YouTube channel. Go check it out. You can also check out the video that Ralph has been referring to that we uploaded yesterday. It gives you much more insight into the BRUVs, and there's some cool stuff. I remember in the video spotted gully, an octopus trying to get into the bait canister. So it's a cool little video. Please go check it out. Hit that bell for notifications. It will notify you if we're posting anything else. So Ben Arnold, another comment. I'm gonna give it to you, Ralph.
Oh, that's very interesting. Ben asks, has it been difficult to maintain the integrity of the mechanism, and have fish succeeded in taking a BRUV structure? That's really, really interesting. So what the BRUV rig is made out of is metal. So it's actually quite a heavy structure. There have been very rare examples of big fish, especially bigger sharks, picking up the BRUV rig and taking it along. So I believe Marine Dynamics has a video somewhere where a great white picks up the bait canister, picks it up a little bit, and then drops it again. Overall, yeah, they haven't taken up the BRUV and then dragged it along thousands and thousands of meters. It's more likely that if a boat travels over the buoy, doesn't take a good look around, it grabs the buoy with its engine and then drags the entire BRUV along. That has happened once or twice. Other animals that do interact quite almost annoyingly with the BRUV rig are the octopus. So we have been using like a screw cap on our BRUV rigs, and it's actually held in quite tightly. However, octopus are very ingenious, and in some areas they have been known to take the bait canister off the bait rig, entire BRUV rig, and actually take it along and eaten it up elsewhere. So I would highly suggest looking at some videos of BRUV studies in False Bay. There are a few videos online still, I believe.
Yeah, and we had that happen not too long ago, when a boat picked up one of our BRUVs. We thought it was missing, and then I remember a week later, actually, we thought the BRUV was gone. A week later, on one of our whale watching cruises, when cruising past our island, which is where we're deploying most of the BRUVs for Marine Dynamics and Ralph with the interns, one of my crew members yelled out, "Stop, stop!" And I didn't know what was going on. I thought someone fell overboard, and we actually ended up getting the BRUV that was lost in one of our props as well. So we were able to retrieve it with the footage and the GoPro, and also that was just a cool story. It was basically impossible to find it, and then we ended up finding it by accident. So guys, thank you very much. If you have any questions, thank you very much for joining us. And we always urge you, if you guys want to help us out, help out with the research and the conservation projects, the penguins, please, any donations are welcome at www.dict.org.za. It's down there. You guys can go check that out. You can check out the Marine Intern Program, as well as some of the initiatives that we are busy with at Marine Dynamics. So thank you very much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. And Ralph, it's always a pleasure. Thank you very much for joining us today as well.
Thank you very much for having me once again. It was absolutely a pleasure.
Okay, guys, next week, remember, great white shark tagging and tracking. Boom. Post us your questions. Remember, it's on Wednesday. Thank you very much for watching today. I stole your thing, Ralph. I stole your thing. Thank you, guys. Cheers.